Put yourself out there.
It was really demoralizing.
A lot of things look really good on paper.
And I just did such a terrible job.
Oof, that's gonna be tough.
I want to welcome you to the second Q&A that I'm doing with a recent acquaintance of mine, Dima. I will let her introduce herself and then we'll get into the Q&A.
My name is Dima El Mashnouk. I am from Lebanon, moved to the US pretty recently, and I'm working on a startup called Unleash. It helps millennials find more meaningful careers.
I think we're on similar journeys, kind of transitioning from, we'll say, big companies, big tech into an entrepreneurial journey, and also focused on this career pivot aspect as well. So a lot of shared interest. There's one pivot we'll focus our time on. It sounds like you'd worked for the United Nations, kind of nonprofit space, then decided to do your MBA, and then went into kind of working in big tech. And then, so I think we'll focus on that MBA pivot, and then maybe we can talk about the secondary one that maybe you and I are going through now as well. But let's talk about the MBA. I guess why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, I was at the United Nations Development Program in Beirut, and I was their private sector coordinator. And it was really cool. We'd get funding from companies and do projects on the ground in Lebanon, mainly focused on women and youth empowerment. So I really loved that, creating that link. But it came a time where I realized that all of the decisions were actually taken by the companies, like by the people providing the funding, and not the UN and not the nonprofits and not the people on the ground. And I wanted to move to the private sector. Decided to go pursue my MBA at Stanford, and that experience really helped me understand everything, especially like coming from a non-traditional MBA background. Everyone's like consulting, investment bankers, startups, tech companies, and I'm one of the few people. We had a close group of people who came from the nonprofit sector and wanted to really pivot after the MBA to the for-profit sector.
I always hear these mixed messages about what people get from MBA.
I want to say friendships, but I know that's a bit cheesy.
A bit cliche. But I hear a lot. I mean, it's about like the people you meet, right? It's like the network and the people that you're a part of is a big one of the big benefits.
Yeah, especially like when I'm coming from nonprofit, I really also cared about the classes. I know a lot of people come to the MBA for the network and all of that, but I really wanted to learn what it's like to be in the for-profit world. Even if I didn't, the amount of people that you get to meet, not only your classmates, the professors, the guest speakers, the lecturers, practitioners, so you get to learn a lot and ask questions, and it's a place to explore. Like, there are so many things that you can explore, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I come in with a plan and I'm gonna do it after graduation. You're probably not gonna do it after graduation, but it's a place to really explore.
What was easier about this process than you thought? I'll ask you the easy one first. What was there a part that you kind of thought would be this big mountain to climb that actually wasn't?
I think for what was really easy is to get people to talk to you, is to get any expert on any subject to talk to you and to walk you through all the steps. It was very easy to talk to people, to get informational interviews, to learn about the process for someone who was as confused as I am, to get a lot of hand-holding and guidance.
I'm sure Stanford probably has a unique aspect of like a very capable cohort, but still, I mean, that's like part of the attraction of going there for sure.
Yeah.
What was harder than you expected?
The pivot into private sector was harder than I expected, because there are a lot of people who have the exact qualifications that all these private sector companies are looking for. And yes, I did my MBA, but all of my experience is in nonprofit. So trying to translate that experience into a more like private sector company was way tougher than I thought it would be.
What aspects of working either for like a for-profit company or for like a big company that you didn't like?
No, it's not about the for-profit. It's about the size of the company. Facebook was honestly a really fun place. Like, it's cool to be part of that story. Your mom gets to brag about you all the time. Now she thinks I'm unemployed. She's like, my daughter's doing nothing. I'm like, no, that's not how startups work. But what I didn't like was I didn't feel like if I missed today, something would happen. I didn't feel ownership in anything. I didn't feel like I was creating a lot of value, because everything that you do in these huge companies takes a lot of time to get approval on anything. I didn't emotionally feel like I was contributing in the way that I wanted to contribute to the world.
The anecdote I've used before is like, it was like I felt like this very tiny cog in like a gigantic machine. Through even like when I worked for Exxon in Canada, it was like a small business unit, and it was different. It was like you kind of felt like a part of this community of a couple hundred people, but I moved to the headquarters and you're like, it's 10,000 people there, and you're just, even if you did exceptional work, you could arguably still not have a measurable impact on the company, And
I think the community aspect that you mentioned was key for me, at least. I was used to being at the UN, and it was like our small team, our small office, we're all really good friends. At Facebook, it was much harder to build those connections, because people are there at different stages of their lives. They're not there to build community specifically, and I really cared about that aspect.
What would you do differently if you had your time back?
Leaving nonprofit, I would do more either volunteer work, side projects, or get more experiential, testing stuff, putting myself out there and taking on projects for free. Like anyone who needed anything, I'd just build things for people, help people build things, because I think it was very difficult to translate my experience. And it would have been more helpful to be like, no, I've actually done this before. Didn't get paid for it, but it doesn't matter, because I'm building this experience.
If we just touch on this current transition you're going through from kind of working in a company to entrepreneurial one, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in that pivot right now?
One, it's a very lonely ride. So getting people on board has been really tough, especially because I decided not to fundraise early on and have been bootstrapping this. So, and I get it, like it's tough to get people to just help you out of goodwill, but it's been very because I'm a solo founder as well, so it's been very lonely, and it's been very getting people to work with you is tough.
Yeah, I think that experience for me is real too, where it's like, I'm not really building a company, but at least building content right now. And I think I told you earlier, found this like co-working group, and that has been really helpful. Like we're all on parallel journeys that are doing different things, but still sort of similar, and just having some folks to check in with that have aligned kind of on similar values and interests has helped a lot. For someone that's maybe in that other nonprofit or considering an MBA, do you have any broad or general advice for someone like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing is to be intentional. So nothing is going to fall from the sky. No one's going to come and pick you up and say, you're perfect for this job. So being intentional about how you think about it and how you want to experience things. There's a great book called Pivot by Jenny Blake. And she talks about, there's like a 5-step process, but the first 4 is, 1 is to plant, the 2nd is to scan, the 3rd is to pilot, and the 4th is to launch. And the idea is like when you're planting, you are introspective. You're like, okay, what am I good at? What do I not like? What are my values? How do I want to spend my time? The 2nd step is to scan, okay, who do I know? Who can I talk to? What are companies that would be interesting? Or what are experiences that would be interesting? And the 3rd, I think, is the most important, is to pilot. Put yourself out there, take informational interviews, shadow people, do side projects, volunteer, try things out, because a lot of things look really good on paper, but they are terrible experiences. And then, obviously, at the end, take all of this information together and put yourself out there and ask people for help. You'll hopefully get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. I see a lot of people get stuck in some of these stages, too, where huge amount of time updating the resume. I'm like, okay, I spend a reasonable amount of time on it, but just don't get stuck there. And then just applying online and waiting for a response is another thing.
No.
And I think even just doing this, I did an interview with Apple, and I just did such a terrible job. It was like, they said something to me like, your experience is kind of not complicated enough. It was really demoralizing at the time. But it really forced me to I obviously did a terrible job explaining what the job I was doing. But there's probably no other way of doing it besides doing
trying.
it. Exactly.
Trying. Put yourself out there. Experiment.
Exactly.
It's not easy, but
Yeah.
you get a lot of quick feedback, and you can base everything off of that.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you to Dima for coming today, and yeah, we'll look forward to bringing more Q&A like this in the near future. Thanks again for watching.